We arrived in Singapore a day early and stayed at the airport. During the afternoon, we visited the Jewel, a unique shopping center with a waterfall, hiking trails up and down the courtyard, and a canopy park. The next day, we boarded our ship, the Diamond Princess, and set sail for Vietnam. In Phu Mai, we visited the Long Phuoc tunnels used by the Viet Cong. We laid flowers at the Long Tan Memorial, a 1966 battle of Australian troops. There are motorbikes everywhere, and most people who wear face masks because of the air pollution. Our second port in Vietnam was Nha Trang. This was the center of the Champa Kingdom from the 2nd century AD until its demise by the Vietnamese 1,000 years later. Here we visited the Long Sung Pagoda. Then on to the Ponagar Cham Towers, built in the 7th to 12th centuries by the Cham people. 4 temples remain of the original 6. At Hong Chung Promontory, we have beautiful sights and music. Our last Vietnamese port was to visit the city of Hue, the capital of Vietnam between 1802 and 1945. We visited the citadel built between 1802 and 1832. The 30 kings of the Nguyen dynasty resided here. The citadel is surrounded by a moat and has 3 separate battlements leading into the Forbidden City, where the emperor lived with his wife and concubines. Unfortunately, 70% of the city was destroyed in the 1947 and 1968 wars. Nearby is the Thien Mu Pagoda with its 7-story pagoda. We took a dragon boat for a delicious lunch. After lunch, we visited the Tu Duc Royal Tomb, built in 1843 for the 2nd emperor. He had 500 wives, 700 concubines, and 140 children. The area is shaped like a human body with major buildings at the belly, chest, and head. Then it uses water features for the arms and legs. We had 2 days in Hong Kong. Sunday, we were worried about the pro-democracy protests, which have been going on for months, but no one encountered any problems. On Monday, I took a tour of Lantau Island. Strict environmental laws preserve most of the island as forested mountains. In Tai O Fishing Village, we saw lots of fish products. Then we climbed the mountain to the giant Buddha built in 1996 out of 1,300 copper pieces. We had a vegetarian lunch at the Poling Monastery. This is our first visit to Taiwan. Our first stop was the Martyr Shrine for the Changing of the Guard. It is dedicated to the many who lost their lives in the Sino-Japanese and Chinese Civil War. After World War II, Mao Zedong defeated Chiang Kai-shek, who took his army to Taiwan, bringing the Chinese emperor's collection of art and artifacts to the island. This formed the contents of the National Palace Museum. 26 of the known 60 roux-ware pieces are here. The most popular item in the museum is the 19th century jadeite cabbage. Following our museum visit, we had a fabulous lunch at the Grand Hotel. We were taught how to ask a question of Buddha at the Baoan Temple, a combination of drawing a numbered stick and throwing stones. When you got a yes or a no, the number would correspond to a poem with further answers. Across the street was a Confucian temple. We ended the day at Chiang Kai-shek Memorial, a huge complex with a statue of him in the upper chamber. That evening, we were entertained by a Taiwan folk group, dancing and playing. The next night, we saw the premiere of a new Princess production, The Secret Silk, an interesting mix of puppets and people. Our first Japanese port was Osaka. We headed to nearby Kyoto, the Japanese capital from 794 to 1869. Now home to 1,600 Buddhist temples and 300 Shinto shrines. Kiyomizo Temple area has both. The key feature was 3 streams of water, one to become healthier, one to become wiser, and the last to become wealthier. We then headed to the Japanese market street, filled with food and eating places, as well as a few tourist shops. Lunch on this tour was traditional Japanese. Lots of various types of fish and vegetables with miso soup and hot tofu. We visited the Kinkaku, the Golden Palace, a Buddhist hall containing relics of Buddha. Our final stop was Nijo Castle, built in 1603 by a shogun and used as his residence when he was in the imperial city. Next day, we docked in Toba, Japan. Our first stop was the Mikomoto Pearl Island, which started the cultural pearl industry. Here we watched divers.
Welcome to Mikomoto Pearl Island. The first women divers could be found working in this part about 2,000 years ago. At present, there are nearly 900 women divers in this region. It is not easy to become a good diver.
We drove up Skyline Drive to see our ship among the islands. Issa Shrine has both an inner and outer garden. The outer shrine, called Giko, we learned that the main hall is torn down every 20 years and rebuilt nearby, a tradition for Shinto shrines. The inner garden is called Neiju, the largest Shinto shrine in Japan. It is a kilometer walk from the torii to the main hall. Here we learn the washing ritual for entering the shrine. We left the ship today and toured the Tokyo area, beginning at the Meiji Shrine. The torii is made from a 1,500-year-old cypress. It was built in 1920 after the death of Emperor Meiji, who reigned from 1867 to 1912 and opened Japan to the west. So in addition to sake casks, there are French wine casks. We're at the Meiji Shrine, Shinto shrine. This is the main entrance. And here is the main hall. Here, what you do to pray is you throw a coin in, you bow twice, clap your hands twice, bow a third time, and make your wish. We toured Tokyo by bus, passing the moat to the Emperor's Palace. Our final stop was Senjorji Buddhist Temple, the oldest in Japan, originally built in 628. Here again, the crowds were everywhere as we walked the entrance street with its many food and tourist stores. January 20th, the day we left, the Chinese announced that a new coronavirus had sickened many in Wuhan, China. 3 days later, most of the city and region was put under quarantine and travel restrictions. A Hong Kong man boarded the Diamond Princess a few hours after we had left and sailed back to Hong Kong. He reported to the hospital in Hong Kong sick with the virus because he had visited Wuhan just before boarding. The ship had to return to Yokohama, and the remaining guests were quarantined. On February 15th, the Americans from the ship were evacuated and flown back to the U.S., where they will remain in quarantine for another 14 days. So far, over 600 passengers have the virus, more than any other country outside China. We really feel lucky that we left just before this extraordinary occurrence.